During the Balkan Wars of 1912 and 1913, the multinational and multi-ethnic Ottoman Empire lost vast regions of its territory. The group in power, the Young Turks, fretted about how to maintain the empire's 1908 promises of equality for all peoples while halting any further loss of lands. Within the Young Turks was a small group of ultranationalists that didn't support the policies of equality. They felt the only way for the empire to maintain its strength in the face of future threats was to promote a Muslim Turkish majority. In October 1913, this small group overthrew the government in a coup d'etat.
And so from 1913 onward, the Ottoman Empire is ruled by this clique of Young Turks that is led by, but not limited to, three individuals that are referred to as the Triumvirate, that included the Minister of War, Enver Bey, the Minister of the Interior, Talat, and the third was the Minister of the Navy or Marine, Cemal Pasha. And so it is this group that decides, as the war clouds do gather in Europe, that in case of a major world conflict in which Germany is involved, Germany will certainly be the victor. And so that is the country to link up with, especially if that country is going to go to war with Russia, a traditional enemy, because extreme and extensive territories have been lost to Russia and to its surrogates, the Serbs, the Bulgarians, the Romanians, the Greeks. And so if we side with the Germans, this is this golden opportunity to win back much of these territories that we once had and had been lost. Even before the Ottoman Empire or Turkey entered into World War I, the government proclaimed a general mobilization for all citizens. Prior to 1908, the Armenians are really exempted from military service because they were an untrustworthy minority. And so a part of their equality and symbols of their equality is that they would now be subject to the draft. So Armenians were now a part of the military structure, and thousands of Armenians were enlisted. And indeed were engaged in the earliest of the military conflicts against Russia in the Turkish army. But once the Young Turk leadership decided that special action had to be taken against the Armenian element in the Ottoman Empire, they began by first segregating all the Armenian men. They were then disarmed and placed into labor battalions. In fact, they were either so maltreated and badly treated that many of them died of hunger, starvation, thirst, and disease. And others of them at a particular stage when they had done their job were then killed outright. Deportations of Armenians had already begun in the month of March of 1915. But it's only after April, and in fact in May, that the plan is put into full motion. And it's real motion because the male population is, in almost all instances, segregated very quickly. That takes away those people who could potentially resist and leaves the rest of the population entirely vulnerable and helpless. The male population is marched out of the city to an undisclosed place, but not far, where the butcher squads are already prepared to dispatch them. And so we have this enormously bloody bath that takes place, in which Normally, under the bodies of 200 or 300 or 400 men, 1 or 2 or 3 individuals are still alive and may crawl out, and are those who can tell us what occurred to the men of this particular village and how they were destroyed or what happened to them. In a way, it's perhaps cruel to say, but the men were the lucky ones because they were killed. The brunt of the genocide fell upon the remaining civilian population, made up overwhelmingly of women and children and elderly. They were living in sensitive war zones. They were told there was a temporary relocation. They could prepare in 1 day or 2 days to move, that they would be protected en route, and that eventually they would be able to come home. Obviously, this created enormous panic. And then begins the process of marching. These marches take place in a number of caravans. Caravans of 500 people, 800 people, 1,000 people from each village, which eventually merge together. And at a time, therefore, you get 4,000 or 5,000 people who are marching southward, always southward, toward the deserts of Syria. And then that 5,000 people then melts down to 800 people and 500 people because the
today in class. Oh, you just have the homework to turn in? Yeah.